So you've gone through early labor, you're likely at 3 or 4 centimeters, your membranes, your water may or may not have released, your mucus plug may or may not have released. That's kind of like a bloody mucousy discharge that comes out. It's very normal. It's like the plug in your cervix essentially. And so now as you move into active labor, surges are likely closer together, maybe 3 or 4 minutes. They're probably longer and stronger with a more distinct peak. You can really feel the pinnacle, and then it starts to slide back down. You might be experiencing temperature changes, getting really hot, getting the shivers. That might be going up and down. So you can do things during this phase to regulate your temperature, like a cool washcloth. You can get into the shower. You can get cozy blankets. Do whatever you need to manage your temperature. You can adjust the thermostat. No offense to everybody around you, but your comfort matters the most. So if you're freezing and they won't turn the heater on if it's the winter or something, go ahead and do that. Really nurture yourself. This is a time when you should really put your people to work. You know, if before you didn't really feel like you needed much support from your doula or your companion, the pressure points that I taught you earlier, maybe you didn't really feel like you needed to be touched. This is probably a time where you need more support and you need people helping you to maybe breathe or to press on your back. You know, don't be afraid to ask for that support during this phase. Who cares if you're rude? I remember in my birth, I'm usually somebody like, I want to be very polite and I don't want to hurt people's feelings. And in my birth, I was like, push on my back. Don't give me that. I don't want that. Like, I just didn't care. And you don't need to care. And nobody's going to be offended. You are birthing a human. You can act. You can say whatever you need to say. And just allow yourself, and we talked about this in the early labor, just to really go within. Some women during this phase, and this is I've heard some really interesting stories about this, they almost talk about like leaving their body behind and they kind of float above. And so that might be an interesting thing too, but they still feel connected and they feel light. They don't feel like it's like this chaotic, like I'm not connected to my body. It's like they're very aware and they're like watching this body birth and they're aware of all the power moving through this woman, but it's almost like they have this bird's eye view. So there's a lot of different interesting things that can happen during this phase. Don't be afraid if you're not like deep in your body and like seeing all these things inside. Like you might have your eyes open and you might be fixating on an object in the room. Again, no wrong way. So many interesting ways to experience this. And you might have moments where you feel like, I can't do this anymore. I want to like step out of my body and I want to run away. And number one, do not be ashamed of those feelings because that's so normal, so natural. I bet you if all women were honest, we've all experienced that feeling at some phase of birth. Sometimes this can be a really exciting moment because I've seen a lot of moms that right when they get to that point, like I cannot do this, they move into transition and they're like 10 centimeters dilated 30 minutes after, like I can't do it, and then they're having their baby. So those emotions, they can come up. We can allow that to move through you. The people that are around you supporting you, they can assist you in moving through that. And again, you might need to be in that space for a little while and to be okay with that and think that this is too much. This is so overwhelming. Feel that and just allow it to come up and out of you. Because if you ignore it and you say, no, like I can't feel that, I can't believe that, it's still there. You're like trapping it in your body. So let it out. You can even verbalize it. There's no shame in saying that I feel like I can't do this anymore, or saying, hey, I feel like I need an epidural. And maybe you do. And maybe this is when you choose to get one. That is okay too. There is no shame in this game. I'm telling you, just be comfortable in the space that you're at and trust yourself, whether that's asking for drugs, saying, actually, I changed my mind, I don't want that, or saying, I need this person to leave the room. You talked about that a little bit.
Yeah. Yes.
So,
Yes. I also had the experience myself where I, again, during my second birth and I was at home, I started crying at a certain point because I thought it was so hard. And I was just like, I started crying to my midwife. I said, I'm doing a terrible job, is what I said. I'm doing a terrible job and I can't do this. And then I threw up. And my midwife was like,
Normal. That's normal.
yeah. And she was like, yes. She was like, here we go. And I remember the way that her excitement was at me crying and throwing up like in one kind of moment. And she was so excited. She was like, now we're going. And it was like, to her, that signified transition. And that meant we were about to have the baby. I had my baby 30 minutes later. And I just didn't know it at the time. And it was so hard in that moment. And she knew what she was doing and she knew what was happening. And I saw her excitement and I saw the way that she interpreted what I was experiencing, it shifted me. And instantly I got into like let's do this space. And literally 30 minutes later, I had my baby. So it is like a time where just no judgment on what you're experiencing. All of those thoughts are going to come up. You're like, some of us, we do have thoughts of, why are we not having an epidural? Where is my epidural? Sometimes we are like, it is significantly like it's time to have the epidural. I had that with my first birth. There was a moment where it was like, I had to make the decision, was this the moment to have an epidural? And at that birth, in that moment, it was. And I got the epidural that birth. So it's different each time and each moment, but no judgment on what you're experiencing and what you're feeling. So many different thoughts and different experiences are going to come up. This is a very intense part of labor.
And I want to invite you to play around with your perspective of intensity during active labor. And I'm not saying you have to be excited by it, but that can be a choice. By saying, this intensity, the more intense it gets, the closer and closer and closer I'm getting to my baby. And you can even do that just with each surge. You don't even have to look at the big picture of it, but just say, this surge is bringing me one step closer to my baby. And I am welcoming the surge. I might not like it. It might really hurt, but it's doing something. I feel that power, and I'm stoked on this surge moving through me. You might not experience every single one of them like that. Some might be like, oh, I can't handle another one. But you do have the choice, and know that you don't have to think of every contraction, every surge as something just exhausting. Or, we place a lot of labels on the surges, like they make me so tired, or they hurt, or I feel like I'm going to throw up. And that is part of the experience, but part of the experience can also be excitement and enhanced power with each and every surge. So play around with that. And I wanted to add with the choices that might, or the options that might come up during active labor. Sometimes it's Pitocin or an epidural or different types of intervention. And again, there's nothing wrong with any of them, but I really encourage you to take a beat before making any choice, unless there's a medical emergency. Obviously, things need to happen quicker in that case. But like for me, for example, I was laboring, I was very active, and my eyes popped open, and I said, I need the epidural. And my sweet partner said, okay, yeah, no, if that's what you need, like, we'll just take some breaths and, just let me know. And then I had another surge. I'm like, oh, whatever, stop talking. And went back in, and I totally forgot about it. And I just kept surging, and it didn't really feel like I needed it again. That was like just this moment. And in that moment, I really felt like that was true. So just give yourself a second, or not, maybe a little bit more than a second, maybe have a few surges. And if that feeling gets stronger and stronger and stronger, like I need this additional support, then by all means, give yourself that support. But leave some space in between the desire and actually making that solid choice.
Because then it's a choice.
Yeah.
Because if you don't give yourself that moment in between, it can become a reactive thing that then you can look back and you can say, I wonder what would have happened if I didn't react like that. When you give yourself a few beats, like Bailey said, then you're making a conscious choice, and you can look back and say, no, I made that was a choice, and therefore that was a piece of my own empowerment. That was a piece of like, what is right for me? And you don't have the same questioning around it. So make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Make sure that you pull back to your intentions for your birth and the experience that you want to have. And in those beats, you can kind of connect to it. It doesn't have to be like a mental, intellectual connection to it where you're running through anything, but it's sort of just like an energetic, you reconnect with what the intention you have for your birth is. And that might lead you to choose an epidural. Or it might lead you to choose to try a few more surges before you do that. And then like Bailey did, you might just move forward without it. So making it a conscious choice instead of a reaction.